Q Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is @CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the National, Friday the 14th of March 2025, from the Politics section. Axing plan to help people switch to clean heating is wrong move. Article written by Patrick Harvey. To say the last few years have been tough is an understatement. Energy prices have soared and remain on an upward curve, with more price rises due in April. Far too many families are already struggling, and with Labour planning benefit cuts too, the outlook is bleak. People deserve to know that the Scottish Government has their backs, and in many previous times that has been the case. Measures such as free bus travel for under-22s and for people seeking asylum, an emergency rent freeze, scrapping peak rail fares for commuters, the creation and then the increase and expansion of the Scottish Child Payment all serve as great examples of when the Scottish Government got it right. All of these measures came about because of political cooperation between progressive parties, and I am proud that the Scottish Greens played a critical role in many of them. But since we left the government, there has been too much change in the wrong direction. With Green voices in the room, we often managed to push the SNP out of their comfort zone, but we did so constructively. We didn't undermine what they were doing. Instead, we put forward new, positive ideas to make the government bolder. That drove policy faster and further ahead in areas like climate, where previously the action hadn't matched the urgency or the targets. Scotland should be able to rely on the Scottish Government to side with them and protect them from the rising cost of living, and the current climate slowdown is a missed opportunity to address both issues at the same time. This week, the government has signalled a huge retreat on the plan to help people switch from fossil fuels to clean, affordable heating. A bill on this was previously on track to be introduced to Parliament in November last year, kicking off a transformative agenda for our climate and for households who are struggling with extortionate energy bills that plunge many people and their families further into fuel poverty. If people get the help they need to afford the switch, they can cut their heating bills by as much as half, while also creating new green jobs in an industry that's ready and eager to expand. It would also get us back on track with climate action after so many missed targets. By dropping, delaying or watering down this plan, the government risks losing out on the investment in jobs, skills and innovation that the country needs. This is the wrong move to make, and it must serve as a wake-up call that we cannot afford to go on like this, setting targets but refusing to take the action that's needed to meet them. At the same time, SNP are guaranteeing that living costs will be hiked even further, as they have no plan in place for renters when temporary rent controls end on April the 1st. Instead of a slow, gradual taper, tenants will face a cliff edge and sudden, uncontrolled rent rises. The temporary measures were brought in by the Greens while we were in government. I was proud to take the emergency legislation through Parliament. Now, with less than 3 weeks until they expire, the Scottish Government is content to throw thousands of renters to the mercy of the markets. There are some responsible landlords out there who won't abuse this opportunity, but there are undoubtedly many who will simply exploit this carte blanche to increase rents before the new housing bill comes into force. But worse still, even that new legislation is being watered down too. The Scottish Government is changing it to lock in above-inflation rent hikes, even in areas where the evidence shows that rents are already unaffordable. Many people are already having to hand over half their paycheck before they have even brought a carton of milk for their morning coffee. And what they get for that is insecure housing, much of which has poor energy efficiency, which means high bills. This is simply unsustainable, and that is why the Greens made the case for serious rent controls. If we are to see a Scotland that puts people and climate first, that must begin with boldness and creativity from the Scottish Government to cut the cost of living and cut emissions with it. That's what the Greens achieved as part of government, and it's tragic to see that work being undone. We don't have time to retreat, regroup or rethink as everything gets more expensive and the world gets warmer. The Scottish Greens will continue our efforts to ensure that homes across Scotland are affordable, secure and warm. If this green action is watered down, it won't just mean more missed targets, it'll hit people in the pocket too. That article was written by Patrick Harvey and read to you by Elizabeth. From The National, Friday the 14th of March 2025, from the news section. ScotRail train trialling cooking oil instead of diesel. Article written by Lucy Jackson. ScotRail has started trialling vegetable oil as an alternative to diesel, describing the move as an exciting step forward in its efforts to make Scotland's railways greener. The trial, which began on February 19th, has seen one of the rail operator's passenger trains fuelled with hydro-treated vegetable oil, HVO, rather than the usual diesel. ScotRail said if the 12-week trial is successful, HVO could be used as a transition fuel, while carbon-neutral fuels like green hydrogen become more readily available. HVO is a renewable and biodegradable fuel made of a waste product from agricultural and food production activities, and can be used in existing diesel engines without modification. The rail operator said it reduces carbon emissions by up to 16% and improves air quality by almost a third compared with traditional diesel, while complying with fire safety standards. Poul Wend Hansen, ScotRail Head of Sustainability, said, "This trial is an exciting step forward in our commitment to reducing the environmental impact of Scotland's railways. HVO has the potential to significantly lower our carbon footprint while allowing us to continue using existing diesel trains more sustainably. We're eager to see the results and assess how this fuel could be part of a greener future for rail travel." The trial has seen a dedicated HVO fuel tank installed at ScotRail's Corker Hill depot in Glasgow. Weekly fuel deliveries are supporting the running of the Class 156 train, which is numbered 156436, and is continuing to carry passengers throughout the trial. The trial is being delivered in partnership with Angel Trains and Crown Oil. That article was written by Lucy Jackson and read to you by Elizabeth. From The National, Friday the 14th of March 2025, from the news section. Scottish community-owned wind farm bid rejected. Article written by Lucy Jackson. A bid to create the largest community-controlled wind farm in Scotland has been rejected. Cowal Community Energy's, CCE, bid was the first of its kind in Scotland where a community would take over a large-scale wind farm site on publicly owned land and benefit from the full income from the turbines. CCE brought 4 community development groups together to bid to take over and renew the Cruachmore wind farm in Cowal, Argyll and Bute, which is currently owned by Forestry Land Scotland. The bid was seen as a test case for communities across Scotland, but it was ultimately rejected by Forestry Land Scotland. Supporters of the project have vowed to fight on and hope to overturn the decision. Graham Murray, a director on Cowal Community Energy, said, "FLS and the Scottish Government are public bodies who emphasise their support for communities and repeatedly state how local areas should benefit from the surge in renewables. They emphasise community consultation and openness. In discussion with officials from FLS today, they confirmed that, in writing their tender process, they did not even consider the possibility that a community bid would be received, and that the process was conceived on the assumption that only corporate developers would bid. This clearly confirms to me that the process was not constructed in such a manner that it would facilitate communities being able to bid on equal terms with corporate developers, and so we will now be challenging that process." Murray added, "We have a detailed plan to finance the project. We have made sure we have access to the necessary expertise to run this type of project. We represent around 80% of the people in Cowal. We are working within both the government's and the FLS's stated policy to support communities to benefit from the renewables explosion. If our bid can be rejected, the idea that Scottish communities will benefit properly from renewables is for the birds. We just don't think FLS thought it through. Alan Stewart, a director on CCE, said, "We've been told by Forestry and Land Scotland that they simply had not expected a community bid, which is genuinely astonishing in the 21st century, and given the emphasis on community empowerment promoted by all our public bodies. This all shows that despite the warm words, everything is still weighted to the well-resourced corporate developers with lots of available resources and established expertise. As things stand, the community groups have no chance in the bidding process." As part of its efforts to overturn the FLS decision, CCE said it hopes to speak to Scottish Government ministers as well as recruiting help from political representatives and organisations who support the Cruachmore initiative. Stewart added, "We feel that the Scottish Government and FLS's own guidance to support community involvement has been largely ignored. For example, the consultation process was non-existent. The local community only learnt that Cruachmore wind farm was up for tender when we stumbled across it by accident a couple of months before the deadline." Dr. Josh Jobel, Policy Manager at Community Land Scotland, said, "It is truly disappointing to learn that CCE's bid for the Cruachmore wind farm was unsuccessful. This was a test case in which FLS and Scottish Government could have turned their warm words about community energy and community wealth building into real action. CCE's ambitions are an inspiration to the community energy sector. Their plans could transform the local economy of the Cowal Peninsula whilst making a significant contribution to SG's own community-owned energy targets. We will continue to support CCE to realise their plans and challenge the flaws in the tendering process." David Leven, Forestry and Land Scotland Director of Commercial Development, said, "As an agency of the Scottish Government, Forestry and Land Scotland, FLS, is working to promote the low-carbon energy transition in a way that delivers best value to the taxpayer and alignment with government policy on community benefits. The recent tender exercise to repower Cruachmore wind farm received lots of market interest, including from Cowal Community Energy, CCE, and was designed to ensure that communities were considered as a key part of the overall evaluation. FLS has met with CCE to explain why its bid was not the preferred one and is keen to maintain a positive dialogue to explore how the local community could potentially benefit from part community ownership in addition to community benefit payments. This is a key objective for FLS, and we look forward to working with CCE and other stakeholders as the project progresses." That article was written by Lucy Jackson and read to you by Elizabeth. From The National, Friday the 14th of March 2025. From the Politics section. SNP beats Scottish Labour to win council seat in by-election. Article written by Xander Elliots. The SNP have won a council by-election, called after the retirement of a long-standing representative. Diane Calder, who had represented the SNP, announced her intention to step down in December, sparking a by-election in the Broxburn, Uphall and Winchborough ward of West Lothian Council. Voters went to the polls on Thursday, and the SNP's Mike Carlin was elected. Ahead of the vote, Ballot Box Scotland analysis said that a few months ago it would have been a simple Labour victory, no questions asked. However, the impact of Reform UK on their vote and the declining popularity of Keir Starmer's Labour administration at Westminster meant the position had become extremely shaky, Ballot Box Scotland said. West Lothian Council said that 4,357 votes had been cast from an electorate of 17,404, representing a turnout of 25%. Standing against Carlin was Alba's Frank Anderson, Scottish Labour's June Andrews, the Greens' Chris Cotter, Lib Dem Oliver Ferrario, Reform UK's David McLennan, and Tory candidate Marnie Taylor. Reform's candidate came in third place with 809 first preference votes, significantly more than the Conservatives on 324. The SNP's Carlin won 1,375 votes, and Scottish Labour's Andrews 1,263. Alba won 135 votes, the Greens 185, and the Lib Dems 229. Transport Secretary Fiona Hislop said, And he won! Congratulations to our hard-working SNP candidate, Mike Carlin, who won the Broxburn, Uphall and Winchborough by-election, both first preferences and at final stage. And to our supporting SNP activists. He will make a great councillor. That article was written by Xander Elliotts and read to you by Elizabeth.
From the National, Monday the 17th of March, from the news section, Glasgow University's authoritarian Palestine protest response panned. Article written by Steph Braun. A student who has been banned from the University of Glasgow campus after staging a protest must be welcomed back, the institution's rector has said. Hannah Taylor was banned from the campus and told she cannot attend lectures or tutorials, having been accused of misconduct during a demonstration in February. Taylor, who is a member of a group called Youth Demand, acted with another student to spray the name James McCoon Smith Learning Hub in water-soluble paint as part of a call for the University of Glasgow to divest from the arms trade. The university has more than £6.8 million worth of investments in the arms industry and has also received around £600,000 in research funding from BAE Systems and Rolls-Royce since 2017, according to the Glasgow University Arms Divestment Coalition. The pair were arrested but have so far not been convicted of any crime. Taylor previously told The National she is now concerned for her progress in studying for a Maths Masters, as she fears the ban could last for the duration of her course. Dr. Ghassan Abu Sita has now called for the ban to be reversed, accusing bosses of an authoritarian response to protest. On February the 6th, 2025, Hannah Taylor and another student sprayed Glasgow University with water-soluble paint to protest the university's refusal to divest from the arms trade, where the institution holds £6.8 million worth of shares, he told the Herald. Since then, Hannah has been banned from campus, denying her access to her lectures, tutorials and possibly her exams. This disproportionate and authoritarian response is in keeping with a concerted effort to crack down on student activism for Palestine on campuses around the globe. From Glasgow to New York, university leaders have bowed to government pressure, seeking to make examples of those students who dare to expose their complicity in genocide. Abu Sita went on to say the university was going against its motto in punishing a student for exposing the truth. Glasgow University's motto is Via Veritas Vita, the way, the truth, the life. Now this liberal facade has fallen. Today, Glasgow students are punished, threatened and intimidated for exposing the truth of the institution's role in facilitating imperialism's crimes. But the students will not be deterred. Not in Glasgow. Not anywhere. Glasgow University must immediately lift the ban on Hannah Taylor. In an email seen by The National, the university told Taylor that failure to adhere to the ban would constitute a breach of the student code of conduct and would be treated accordingly. She was told the precautionary measure would be reviewed on a monthly basis. A university spokesperson said, "The University of Glasgow upholds the right to freedom of expression, including the right of staff and students to engage in peaceful demonstrations. However, we do not tolerate unlawful activities which interfere with the rights of others to go about their business in peace. As an institution, we stand against hate or harassment of any kind. We regularly communicate with all our staff and students about the need for tolerance towards each other, and we reiterate this call for all members of our community to be respectful to each other at all times." And that article was written by Steph Braun and read by Ian. From The National, Monday the 17th of March 2025, from the news section. John Swinney calls on Labour to raise taxes, not cut disability benefit. Article written by Xander Elliotts. First Minister John Swinney called for the UK Labour government to look at tax reform before balancing the books on the backs of the poor with benefit cuts. On Tuesday, Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall is expected to set out plans for benefits reform that could see the welfare budget slashed by as much as £6 billion. Reports that this could include cuts to the Personal Independent Payment, PIP, the main disability benefit, have sparked an outcry from Labour MPs, and Swinney said it was outrageous that Labour are eyeing up cuts to disability benefits rather than looking to raise money elsewhere. The First Minister warned that the reduction in budget south of the border could have a negative impact on his government's ability to fund devolved benefits due to Barnett consequentials. Funds allocated to Scotland which reflect UK government spending in England. He said, "The Scottish Government is not clear about the plans that the UK Government is contemplating taking forward, but, obviously, there is the potential for those to have a damaging effect on the ability of the Scottish Government to provide the welfare support that we provide. I think it's outrageous that a Labour government is proposing to balance the books in the backs of the poor. That's not what you should do. You should be supporting individuals that face vulnerability and difficulty, and having an honest conversation about the public finances, and that's what's necessary just now. Not the type of measures that we've seen speculated about, which will have a damaging effect on many vulnerable people in our society." He went on, "We live within our resources in the Scottish Government, and we've taken tough decisions on tax to enable us to do exactly that. The problem the Labour government has got is that they're not prepared to take the tough decisions on tax. We've done that in Scotland. We've set out to the public what we will do, and we've raised the resources which enable us to operate a civilised and caring society, and I think the UK government should do likewise. Labour ministers insist that reform is necessary given the number of people in England and Wales claiming either sickness or disability benefits has soared from 2.8 million to about 4.0 million since 2019. The benefits bill has risen with this increase, reaching £48 billion in 2023-24, and is forecast to continue rising to £67 billion in 2029-30. Social Security Scotland controls a range of benefits north of the border, though many are still reserved to Westminster. Amid a revolt from some Labour MPs, Emma Reynolds, Economic Secretary to the Treasury, said the most vulnerable would be protected. Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme on Monday, she said, "We'll set out further details, but the severely disabled and the most vulnerable will always get support, and there will always be a safety net." And some colleagues are jumping to conclusions about her plans before they've heard them, so I just urge them to be patient. An article was written by Sandra Elliards and read by Ian McKenna. From the National, Monday the 17th of March 2025, from the Politics section. John Swinney calls out Scottish Tories' attacks on Nicola Sturgeon. Article written by Sandra Elliards. The Scottish Conservative provided a classic example of the abuse women face in politics with their attacks on Nicola Sturgeon last week. First Minister John Swinney has said. The SNP leader called out his Scottish Tory counterpart after talking about the treatment of women in politics in Edinburgh on Monday. Swinney had been asked a question about the number of SNP MSPs who have said they will not stand again in 2026. As it stands, 23 MSPs elected for the SNP in 2021 have said they will not run again next year. The majority of them, 14, are women. Swinney was asked if the numbers could mean the SNP have a women issue. He responded, "No, I don't think that. I think there are some big issues about how women feel in public life because of the amount of abuse that's hurled about. We had a classic example of it last week from Russell Finlay at First Minister's Questions, where he used 4 questions to basically hurl abuse at a woman. The Scottish Tory leader used his questions at the weekly session on Thursday to attack Sturgeon, whom he described as having a vast back catalogue of failure. It came after a statement from Scottish Tory Deputy Leader, Rachel Hamilton, issued in response to the news that Sturgeon would not stand in 2026, which Swinney suggested was graceless. Responding to the First Minister's latest comments, Hamilton said, "This is desperate deflection from John Swinney. The reason Russell highlighted Nicola Sturgeon's record is because it's truly dismal, and John Swinney supported her every step of the way. We wouldn't be doing our job as an opposition party if we ignored the many policy failures and broken promises of Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney, which continue to negatively affect Scots' lives. As for the number of women SNP MSPs stepping down, perhaps this is a reaction to Stephen Flynn bulldozing aside a sitting female MSP in a bid to land a Holyrood seat, and John Swinney doing nothing about it." Speaking on Monday, The First Minister added that he was very pleased with the female candidates in his party who are seeking election next year. I want to give every signal I possibly can do. I want to encourage women to participate in public life and in politics and to come forward for election and for us to benefit from their contribution, he said. As well as Sturgeon, former Minister Hamza Yousaf and current Cabinet Secretaries Sona Robinson, Fiona Hislop and Marie Goujon will stand down, as well as Junior Ministers Natalie Dawn-Innes, Graham Day, Richard Lockhead and Christina McKelvey, who is currently on leave receiving cancer treatment. Former Health Secretary Michael Matheson, who resigned after a months-long saga over a near £11,000 iPad bill racked up by his children while on holiday, announced he would not seek re-election on Sunday. But despite the exodus from the SNP benches, the party's chief whip in Westminster, Kirsty Blackman, said there was a huge amount of talent among proposed candidates. Many of those looking to stand are current and former MPs, including Westminster leader Flynn. And that article was written by Xander Eliards and read by Ian McKenna. From the National, Monday the 17th of March, from the news section, Loch Lomond Hotel issues statement after refusing to help ill baby, by Morgan Carmichael. A hotel has apologised after a staff member refused to help a terminally ill baby. 3-month-old Charlie, who lives with a tracheostomy, was taken to Duck Bay Hotel and Restaurant in Loch Lomond yesterday while receiving end-of-life care at Robin House Children's Hospice in Ballach. However, Charlie's family were left shocked after an employee refused to let them plug in the baby's nebuliser, which turned liquid-containing medication into a mist to breathe in. Charlie's uncle, Bradley Raynham, blasted the hotel on social media after his sister and her fiancé spent £40 on coffee and cake. Taking to Facebook, Bradley said, "My sister and fiancé went to this absolute embarrassment of a place as they're trying to do nice things and make everyday Charlie has left special. They spent £40 on an overpriced coffee and cakes and stayed there for a while. It got to the time when Charlie needed his nebuliser, so, as the restaurant was so busy, they asked at the reception of the hotel if they could use one of the plug sockets so he could get this. While they're holding him in their arms, they were told, 'No, we don't do this here.' Even after explaining the situation, they weren't interested one bit. They had to leave and get back to the hospice immediately so they could give him this. While going back, they've spoken to the nurse there as they were obviously upset. The nurse has called them and they've been told they're not speaking to a manager and they're not interested, essentially. The charge nurse then phoned them and said they'd hold to speak to a manager to then be told, 'Other people will be waiting to call us and we can't help.' How in this day and age can any place turn down someone away for something like this? Especially after they've been being there and spending money, literally holding a baby in their arms who needs this. Not really going to make a massive difference, but hopefully this gets shared far and wide and nobody bothers to go and spend their money there. In the nicest way possible, I hope the place rots and none of the staff are ever in a situation like this with their extremely ill child." The post created an outrage among other social media users. One person wrote, "This is vile," while another said, "Absolutely disgusted." A third person said, "I have never in my life heard of anything so disturbing and completely unavoidable. Where's the compassion? I will be warning everyone I know never to give business to this absolute disgraceful company. Sickened." A fourth added, "Oh my god, this is just completely inhumane. Absolutely disgusted in them. I can't even fathom this." While a fifth said, "This is an absolute disgrace, absolutely heartbreaking for the family looking to spend time with their son." Duck Bay Hotel has since apologised following the incident. A statement from the hotel directors and management was posted on Facebook. The established said the incident was due to a junior member of staff making a mistake. The statement read, "Duck Bay Marina have recently been made aware of an incident which occurred earlier today and would like to profusely apologise for what happened. The incident involved a junior member of staff who has recently joined the company, acting without guidance, who entirely misunderstood and misjudged the situation. We are deeply upset at how this incident was handled and we are truly sorry for the upset it has caused. It is in absolutely no reflection of the values of Duck Bay Marina or our hard-working staff, many of whom are devastated by the incident. A full investigation will follow and the necessary remedial action will be taken. We have made contact with both Robin House and Charlie's parents to offer a personal apology and to reassure them that the incident is completely unacceptable and will be dealt with as a matter of urgency. As long-time supporters of local charities, we will certainly make amends for the incident and will take the opportunity to review our training and procedures to ensure such an incident is never repeated. We are also aware of social media posts and comments regarding the incident. Whilst we completely understand people's reaction to what happened, we would like to remind you that this incident, involving a very inexperienced young person who has made a mistake, they are absolutely devastated by what has happened and how they have handled things. Some people were commenting on Duck-based Hotel's Facebook calling for a boycott. However, the hotel has turned off comments. An article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From the National, Monday the 17th of March, from the Culture section, Scottish butcher wins best black pudding in UK with pre-war recipe. Report by Alistair Ferguson. A butcher from Angus has been crowned the UK's first ever black pudding champion after dusting off an old pre-war recipe. D.H. Robertson in Arbroath was able to triumph over some of the Goliaths of the industry to win what has been described as the ultimate butcher's challenge in a head-to-head title race in London. Shop owner Steve Bennett said he was bursting with pride after his black pudding was crowned the best in the UK. "This is just amazing, overwhelming," he said. "To be judged as making the best black pudding in the whole of the UK is such an honour. We faced some amazing talent from the rest of the country and came out on top. That's just fantastic." Hosted by Scottish Craft Butchers, National Craft Butchers and Kew Guild of Butchers, the event aims to become an annual or biennial battle among national and regional champion black pudding makers to find the ultimate winner in the UK. Bennett was invited to compete as the current East of Scotland and reserve national Scottish champion, with his black pudding already wowing Scottish judges. He explained his recipe, which won over the judges in London, actually came with the shop, and that he reckons it dates before the Second World War. "It's a recipe we inherited from Doug Robertson, a former owner of the business," he said. "The recipe book came with the shop. We reckon it dates back to before the Second World War, and, although our customers have been enjoying it for generations, I decided to dust it down and give it a wee tweak or two for today's palate." Bennett's tweaks proved to be a roaring success as his hand-mixed, small-batch black pudding has put Arbroath back under the culinary spotlight, alongside the town's famous smokies, a type of smoked haddock. "It's tremendous that a wee family business in a small coastal town in Scotland can triumph over the Goliaths of the industry," Bennett said. "I'm so proud of my whole team for this amazing achievement. I never expected it in my wildest dreams." Bennett added he's not partying with the winning recipe anytime soon, claiming his UK-beating black pudding secrets are firmly under lock and key. He runs our Arbroath family butcher business with a team of 12 staff, including his wife Pam and butcher daughter Ariane. The team has reportedly already seen a boost in production in the run-up to the Champion of Champions announcement. "We make all our black pudding with Scottish ingredients and love," said Bennett, "and we'll be happy to work 12 hours to meet the demand if people want to taste the best black pudding in the UK. Gordon King, Executive Manager of Scottish Craft Butchers, said the championship win was due recognition for Scotland's independent craft butchers. "Everyone invited to compete as a champion in their own right," said Gordon, "so it really was a battle of the titans." Black pudding competitions are always fiercely fought events among our butchers, and the UK title was the one they all wanted to win, especially as it's the first ever champion showdown of this type. Scotland fielded a really strong team of regional and national champions, and D.H. Robertson's win underpins the belief that our small producers of high quality food can triumph at UK level against the fiercest competition. It's heartwarming to know that our members are not only considered the best, but judged the best. You don't have to be big to win big. In an article written by Alistair Ferguson.
From the National, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the Politics section. Scotland reacts as Israel carries out Gaza bombardment. Article written by Laura Pollock. Politicians in Scotland have described the latest round of strikes undertaken by Israel on Gaza as nothing less than a massacre. Israel has killed more than 413 people across Gaza in strikes ordered by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu overnight. The number of those killed is being regularly updated. Netanyahu, who is wanted for arrest by the International Criminal Court for war crimes, said he ordered the strikes because of a lack of progress in talks to extend the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Officials said the operation was open-ended and was expected to expand. The White House said it had been consulted and voiced support for Israel's actions. In reaction, the SNP said that both swift condemnation and real consequences must be enforced on the Israeli government for their overnight bombardment. SNP Middle East spokesperson Brendan O'Hara, MP, said, "In the past week, the Israeli government has broken international law, and they have now chosen to breach an already fragile ceasefire, dropping bombs on a civilian population in the ruins of Gaza. It is clearer by the day that condemnation isn't enough. The Israeli government will only listen if they face real consequences from the international community for breaking this ceasefire and breaking international law. Because ultimately, this is what impunity looks like. The international community's consistent failure to act allows the Israeli government the freedom to bomb without consequence and sanction. The people of Gaza are desperately struggling to rebuild their lives in the rubble that has been left to them. They are once again being asked to live with the threat of more bombs raining down on them whenever the Netanyahu government decides." O'Hara also said the broader context of the bombardments is crucial. Attempts to reach a truce in Ukraine mean a clear message must be sent that those who choose to breach ceasefires will face consequences, he added. Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvie called for the UK government to end its complicity in genocide and finally halt arms sales to Israel. Under the terms of the ceasefire deal, Israel should have been withdrawing from Gaza by now, but instead they have violated the ceasefire by carrying out nothing less than a massacre, Harvie said. The scale of horror that Israel is inflicting must serve as a wake-up call to our governments to end their role in genocide and hold the Israeli government to account for its war crimes. He added, "Continuing to arm and support Israel can only lead to further destruction and even more lost lives. It is civilians who are paying the devastating cost of collective punishment, mass displacement, and the destruction of schools, hospitals, and homes. With a Trump administration that doesn't even pretend to care about Palestinian rights, the Israeli government is clearly feeling empowered and knows that they will face no consequences. We cannot allow this to continue any longer. There is a moral obligation on all governments to stop arming Israel and instead hold them accountable for their actions." Harvie also called for the Scottish Government to stop all financial support for companies who are profiting from the war, after reports that Scottish Enterprise has given over £1 million to organisations that arm Israel since the start of the war. The Scottish Government has rightly condemned UK complicity, but time and time again it has refused to end support for the companies who are enabling and profiting from the killing. It is time for them to put their money where their mouth is and end their hypocrisy. And that article was written by Laura Pollock. From The National, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the news section. TripAdvisor suspends comments following Duck Bay Hotel outrage. Article written by Morgan Carmichael. TripAdvisor has suspended comments for a Scots hotel after staff caused an outrage by refusing to help a terminally ill baby. On Monday, the Glasgow Times reported that 3-month-old Charlie, who lives with a tracheostomy, was taken to Duck Bay Hotel and Restaurant in Loch Lomond last weekend, while receiving end-of-life care at Robin House Children's Hospice in Balloch. However, the Tots family were left shocked after an employee refused to let them plug in the baby's nebulizer, which turns liquid containing medication into a mist to breathe in. Charlie's uncle, Bradley Rainham, blasted the hotel on social media after his sister and fiancé spent the day there. Taking to Facebook, he said, It got to the time Charlie needed his nebulizer, so as the restaurant was so busy, they asked at the reception of the hotel if they could use one of the plug sockets so he could get this. While they're holding him in their arms, they were told, "No, we don't do this here." Even after explaining the situation, they weren't interested one bit. They had to leave and get back to the hospice immediately so they could give him this. When going back, they've spoken to the nurse there, as we're obviously upset. Bradley went on to say that the nurse at the hospice apparently called the hotel twice to try and speak with a manager, but was denied both times. The post quickly created outrage among other social media users, forcing the hotel into an apology. A statement from the hotel directors and management was posted on Facebook, with the establishment saying the incident was due to a junior member of staff making a mistake. Now, a message has appeared on TripAdvisor which insinuates that following the incident, the reviewing website has received an influx of non-first-hand experiences with the restaurant. The message reads, "Due to a recent event that has attracted media attention and has caused an influx of review submissions that do not describe a first-hand experience, we have temporarily suspended publishing new reviews for this listing. If you've had a first-hand experience at this property, please check back soon. We're looking forward to receiving your review." And that article was written by Morgan Carmichael. From The National, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the Politics section. UK government to freeze civil service credit cards. Article written by Lucy Jackson. Civil service credit cards will be frozen this week and under plans to reduce their numbers by 50% and slash UK government spending. The Cabinet Office will order almost all of the 20,000 procurement cards used by civil servants to be frozen. To regain access to the cards, civil servants will need to reapply and justify why they need them, or they will be cancelled at the end of the month. The spend on the credit cards jumped from £155 million in 2020 to 2021 to £675 million in 2024 to 2025. The move comes after Keir Starmer vowed to reshape the flabby state and slash the cost of bureaucracy. Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden said the so-called government procurement cards should only be provided to officials when it is absolutely essential. Some civil servants need the cards to deliver services for government departments and agencies. Cards used by diplomatic staff in unstable environments will be among a small number exempt from the freeze. The government expects to reduce the number of civil service credit cards in use by at least 50%. New spending controls will bring down the maximum spend for hospitality from £2,500 to £500, with anything over the new limit requiring approval from the Director General. Civil servants will also be barred from using cards for common goods and services that can be dealt with at scale instead, such as booking official travel, training, or buying office supplies. McFadden said, "We must ensure taxpayers' money is spent on improving the lives of working people. It's not right that hundreds of millions of pounds are spent on government credit cards each year, without high levels of scrutiny or challenge. Only officials for whom it is absolutely essential should have a card. Our clampdown on government credit cards will deliver savings that can be used to drive our plan for change, securing our borders, getting the NHS back on its feet, and rebuilding Britain." And that article was written by Lucy Jackson. From The National, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the news section. Extreme wildfire warning issued across Scotland. Article written by Alistair Ferguson. A warning for extreme wildfires has been issued across Scotland by firefighters this month. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, SFRS, have issued the warning of wildfires to people who live within or who may enter rural areas of Scotland and have asked them to exercise caution. A very high danger assessment will come into force on Thursday and will cover all low-lying areas and the Central Highlands. The announcement from SFRS follows an initial warning which covers central and southwest Scotland between Monday to Wednesday this week. The extreme danger assessment will cover all low-lying areas in Scotland this Friday. SFRS have warned that wildfires have the potential to burn for days and devastate large areas of land and threaten nearby communities. Group Commander Murray Dalgleish, who is a wildfire tactical advisor for the SFRS, said livestock, farmland, wildlife, protected woodland and sites of special scientific interest can all be devastated by fires. He said, "We are asking the public to exercise extreme caution and think twice before using anything involving a naked flame. Many rural and remote communities are hugely impacted by wildfires, which can cause significant damage. Livestock, farmland, wildlife, protected woodland and sites of special scientific interest can all be devastated by these fires, as can the lives of people living and working in rural areas. These fires can also have a hugely negative impact on the environment and the release of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. Human behaviour can significantly lower the chance of a wildfire starting, so it is crucial that people act safely and responsibly in rural environments and always follow the Scottish Outdoor Access Code." And that article was written by Alistair Ferguson. From The National, Tuesday the 18th of March 2025, from the news section. Concerns growing as police search for women missing from Edinburgh. Article written by Gregor Young. Police are searching for a woman who has gone missing from Edinburgh. Jordan Allen was last seen around 8:30 a.m. on Monday, March 17th, in the Rulugas Road area of the capital city. In an appeal on Tuesday morning, officers said that concerns are growing for Allen's welfare. She is described as white, around 5 foot 5 inches, of medium build with long blonde hair and tattoos on both wrists. When last seen, Jordan was wearing grey joggers and a black jacket. She has connections in the West Lothian and Fife areas. Inspector Kenny Robertson said, "It is unusual for Jordan not to be in contact with her family, and we need to make sure she is safe and well. We are asking anyone who has seen Jordan or knows where she might be to get in touch. She may have travelled to Kirkcaldy by train. Anyone who can help is asked to call Police Scotland on 101, quoting reference number 3208 on Monday, 17th March 2025. And that article was written by Gregor Young.
The National Politics on Wednesday the 19th of March. Former Scottish Labour MSP quits with a furious attack on Sir Keir Starmer. An article written by Xander Elliots. A former Scottish Labour MSP has resigned from the party after 35 years, following the UK government's swinging cuts to disability benefits. On Tuesday, Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall said that the Labour government would cut the Personal Independence Payment, or PIP, by £5 billion per year by 2030, leading to widespread condemnation from charities. Neil Findlay, who represented Labour at Holyrood for a decade until 2021, said in a furious letter to Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer that he was betraying Labour's proud history and laying waste to any claim of moral principle. Resigning his membership, Mr Findlay said, "I can no longer remain a member of a party that lied to the British people at the last election and with regularity betrays the people who voted for it. A party that gave assurances to the voters that change was coming, but failed to tell them that the change it meant was to impoverish pensioners through cuts to their winter fuel allowance, betray WASPy women by refusing to compensate them for the state's failure, punish defenceless children by maintaining the horrific two-child cap, abandon the Grangemouth workers, and now attack the long-term sick and disabled by slashing social security payments. I refuse to call them benefits or welfare. All of this to fund increased spending on the UK's war machine, weapons that will be used to kill and injure innocent men, women and children in far-off lands." He added, "As political leaders like you, Mr Starmer, and your colleague Wes Streeting seek to stigmatise those with a mental illness and take money from those suffering from cancer, multiple sclerosis or heart disease, you accept hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of freebies, financial donations, clothing, glasses and tickets to football matches and pop concerts. Tell me who's really milking the system. Of course, it's one rule for you and another rule for the poor, the sick and the disabled." Mr Finlay said Mr Starmer was threatening the very existence of the Labour Party, adding, "MPs who continue to support your agenda are turkeys voting for Christmas. In solidarity with the individuals and families who will be affected by these vindictive and brutal policies, and for my own sanity, dignity and self-respect, I can no longer remain a member of the Labour Party." On Wednesday, Mr Starmer defended the cuts to disability, saying that the rising sickness and disability benefits bill is devastating for the public finances and has wreaked a terrible human cost. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to be affected by the changes to PIP eligibility, which are expected to account for the largest proportion of savings that the government hopes to make. Writing in the Times newspaper, Mr Starmer pointed to the 2.8 million working-age people out of work due to long-term sickness, claiming that this was a damning indictment of the Conservative record on welfare. The Prime Minister added, "The result is devastating for the public finances. By 2030, we're projected to spend £70 billion a year on working-age incapacity and disability benefits alone. But more importantly, it has wreaked a terrible human cost. Young people shut out of the labour market at a formative age. People with complex long-term conditions written off by a single assessment. People who want to return to work, yet can't access the support they need. All this is happening at scale, and it's indefensible." An article written by Xander Elliots. The National News on Wednesday the 19th of March. Glasgow University rector is blacklisted from the BBC after his Gaza comments. An article written by Lucy Jackson. The rector of Glasgow University has claimed that he's been deplatformed from appearing on the BBC. Dr Ghassan Abu Sitta is a British Palestinian medic and a world-leading expert on war-injured patients and children. He was elected as Glasgow University's rector in April of last year. He worked as a doctor in hospitals in Gaza in the immediate wake of the October the 7th attacks on Israel and has previously given his first-hand account of the atrocities he's witnessed while working in hospitals in Gaza. In a social media post on Tuesday, Mr Abu Sitta said, "I was told by BBC journalists that I'm on a list of deplatformed speakers who will not be interviewed. I've kept a tally of the number of times its journalists asked for interviews, then cancelled an hour before because of emergency. Today was number 7. Mr Abu Sitta was responding to a tweet from journalist and national contributor Owen Jones, who posted an interview with Karishma Patel, a former BBC journalist who left the corporation in October because of its Gaza coverage. We told how the rector spoke out following news that more than 400 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes early on Tuesday morning. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the attacks early on Tuesday, which killed 404 people, including women and children, and injured more than 600, the Gaza Health Ministry said. Mr Abu Sitta said the White House voicing support for Israel's actions means that America is also complicit with the genocide in Gaza. The moronic idea that Mr Trump is a war-hating fascist was laid to rest with the dead children of Gaza. This is America's genocide. The BBC has been contacted for comment. An article written by Lucy Jackson. The National Politics on Wednesday the 19th of March. Kemi Badenoch, net zero claims are total rubbish, says an expert. An article written by Lucy Garcia. Kemi Badenoch's claim that net zero is impossible to achieve by 2050 has been branded total rubbish by an expert at a top Scottish university. The Conservative chief gave a speech on Tuesday arguing that the UK has to get real about its climate targets and saying that she would be focusing on finding achievable solutions instead. But Professor Dave Ray, Chair in Carbon Management and Education at Edinburgh University, said that the Tory leader's assessment was incorrect. He commented, "A net zero UK by 2050 impossible. Total rubbish." If Ms Badenoch and her party are truly worried about threats to living standards, then they should be pushing the government to strive even harder on climate action, not backsliding towards the fetid political swamp of climate denial that puts everyone's future at risk. In a speech to launch the party's policy renewal process in London, Ms Badenoch said that net zero by 2050 cannot be achieved without a significant drop in our living standards, or worse, by bankrupting us. But naming an alternative date would be repeating the same mistake made in setting the current goal. The party may later come up with its own target if subject matter experts decide that one is necessary, she said. The MP has tasked Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho, with help from Shadow Scotland Secretary and Energy Minister Andrew Bowie, to look at solutions for delivering cheap and clean energy. She called herself a net zero sceptic because of over-reliance on China and unreliable targets. Net zero by 2050 is impossible, she said. I don't say that with pleasure. I want a better future and a better environment for our children, but we have to get real. It emerged on Tuesday in a Byline Times article that Ms Badenoch had moved away from the long-standing commitment after taking donations from key funders of a climate science denial group. The MP took donations from the Global Warming Policy Foundation and connected pressure group Net Zero Watch. Both organisations had called for the 2050 target to be scrapped. Meanwhile, environment group the World Wildlife Fund said Ms Badenoch is ignoring the evidence that the net zero sector is growing faster than the overall economy. Isabella O'Dowd, the World Wildlife Fund's head of climate policy, said, "The UK is a world leader in rolling out renewable energy and in sustainable finance, and businesses recognise that decarbonising our economy is the biggest business opportunity of the century." Theresa May, who initially set the UK net zero target of 2050, hit back at the current Tory leader after the speech too. She defended her policy, telling social media it is supported by the scientific community and backed by the Independent Climate Change Committee as being not just necessary but feasible and cost-effective. Ms May noted that the world is already seeing the impact of climate change, from extreme weather events to supply chain disruption and increased climate-induced migration. With every additional increment of warming, the risks of climate change increase significantly and at an increasing rate. Delaying action will only harm the next generation and increase both the economic and social costs of climate change, she said. An article written by Lucy Garcia. The National News on Wednesday the 19th of March. Major battery storage plant plans approved by the Scottish Government. An article written by Alistair Ferguson. Plans for a major battery storage plant in Dumfries and Galloway have been approved by the Scottish Government. The plant will be constructed on grassland near Gretna Green and will house almost 400 units, which are similar in size and design to shipping containers. Permission for the plant was secured by Energy Hub and was approved by the Scottish Government's Energy Consents Unit. Dumfries and Galloway Council raised no objection to the project when consulted with the proposal. Plans for the battery storage plant include it being connected to a neighbouring substation and will also have fencing and CCTV cameras around the site's perimeter. The site will have the capacity to store 456 megawatts of power, which is enough to deliver a day's energy to thousands of homes in Dumfries and Galloway. The site's storage systems will work by stockpiling power produced by renewable sources, such as wind and solar, and will release electricity when required to meet demand. An article written by Alistair Ferguson. The National News on Wednesday the 19th of March. The Ministry of Defence is said to be considering the return to use of a World War II bunker. An article written by Alistair Ferguson. A secret underground bunker could be used by the Ministry of Defence amid growing concerns of war, its manager has said. The historic bunker, based in Barnton Quarry in Clermiston in Edinburgh, was built in secret during the 1940s as part of Britain's air defences during the Second World War and was only declassified in 1955. The manager of the Barnton bunker, Ben Mitchell, has claimed that the Ministry of Defence asked to train at the site a week into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. He added that due to current world tensions, including the war in Ukraine, there's been a surge in interest in the bunker. Mr Mitchell claimed that the Ministry of Defence commissioned surveys on the underground safe zone, and army regiments have also applied to train there. He told the Scottish Sun, "The week that Russia invaded Ukraine, we got a call from the Ministry of Defence to see if it could do training in the bunker for bunker warfare. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was interesting that they were suddenly interested and made the correlation. We thought that they were going after President Putin in one of his bunkers. That's why they needed the training." He added, "We've also had other regiments apply for training here for general exercises. Chances are, if we ever did go to war, these places would be requisitioned by the Ministry of Defence if it needed them again. It did go ahead with surveys, but are not heard back. If it did requisition, it would get the place up to standard, so that's some positive effects." The Barnton bunker was used for classified roles during the Cold War, amid fear of Soviet power and the use of nuclear weapons. Mr Mitchell said it's one of the most important bunkers in Scotland, as it is where the country would be run from in the event of a nuclear war. An article written by Alistair Ferguson.
This is a column taken from the opinion pages of The National, published on Wednesday, the 19th of March. It's written by the wee ginger Doug. Anna Sarwar has gaslighted Scots over benefits cuts. Before the Westminster general election last summer, Anna Sarwar said, "Read my lips, no austerity under Labour. I'm disabled, and today, like millions of other disabled people, I've been bracing myself for the details of the Labour government's cuts to disability benefits, fearing the worst." Mr Sarwar has denied that the brutal cuts announced today amount to austerity, insisting net spending will go up. "Read my lips, Annas, this sure as hell feels like austerity to me. The dread and the anxiety that we felt under the Tories are back, all the worse because Labour promised change." Anna Sarwar's gaslighting doesn't change the reality of the cuts announced today. When you are disabled, you live in a state of vulnerability, knowing that you are dependent on other people for help with the most basic essential tasks, which you take for granted when you are able-bodied. Things like being able to tie your own shoelaces, being able to take a shower unassisted and without supervision, being able to go outdoors, or even remain indoors by yourself without the constant fear of falling, being able to cut up and eat a plate of food in front of you. Every waking moment, disabled people are acutely aware of just how much we depend on others. That dependence does not go away just because the government slashes the meagre financial support from the state that helps to cover the additional costs that come with disability. The needs remain, but the fear of losing the support that allows disabled people to maintain a modicum of dignified living is back in spades, compounded because this is a party that promised that it was different from the nightmare of 14 years of conservative austerity. Labour sold itself to the electorate as the good guys, the party which promised relief from a decade and a half of Tory chaos, and the demonisation of the poor, the vulnerable, and the disabled. Instead, as soon as Mr Starmer got into power, he embarked upon a programme which is every bit as heartless and lacking in compassion as the Tories he replaced. The signs that he was lying were always there with Mr Starmer. I warned of them myself. Yet this man persuaded millions of people to vote for him, promising change from the cruelty of the Conservatives. It is cruel to deprive people of hope, as the Tories did. It is infinitely more cruel to offer hope than snatch it away as soon as you get the votes and power that you craved. Ableist contempt is now UK government policy. On Tuesday, Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall told the House of Commons how she is going to make the lives of disabled people harder and more limited. Only a few years ago, Ms Kendall was considered to the far right of Labour, and out of tune with the vast majority of Labour members and supporters. In 2015 she stood for the party leadership, with the support of the centre-right Blue Labour group, on a platform of benefits cuts and was roundly rejected, receiving only 4.5% of the vote, finishing in last place. Now she's on the front bench, implementing her right-wing agenda. "I have a neighbour who is always very polite to my face, but behind my back he mouths off to other people in our small town, that I am lazy because I just sit about, while others do everything for me. That ableist contempt, fed by the right-wing press, is now Labour government policy. As she stood to make her announcement on disability and sickness benefits, Ms Kendall actually blamed the Tories for paying out too much on disability and sickness benefits, and announced £5 billion in cuts. The main disability benefit is the Personal Independence Payment, or PIP. PIP comprises two components, the daily living component for help with extra cost associated with daily life, and the mobility component to help with the extra mobility costs associated with mobility for disabled people. For example, taxis for those who are unable to use public transport easily, and can neither drive nor walk very far due to their disability. PIP is not means tested, and many disabled people use it to help cover the additional costs they face, in order to remain in work. Ms Kendall announced that changes will be made to the eligibility criteria for the daily living component of PIP to make it harder to qualify. This change, slated to be introduced in late 2026, will prevent many disabled people from qualifying for the benefit, and will remove the benefit from many of those who currently receive it, when their claims come up for review. She announced that no changes would be made to the mobility component of PIP, and bowing to pressure from the Labour backbenchers, Ms Kendall dropped her previous plan to freeze PIP for a year. Despite what Mr Sarwar claims, millions of disabled and chronically sick people will find themselves facing sharp reductions in their already meagre incomes due to these cuts. What about Scotland? PIP is currently being phased out in Scotland, with the Devolved Adult Disability Payments, or ADP, administered by Social Security Scotland, expected to fully replace it by the end of 2025. The structure and eligibility criteria for ADP are currently identical to PIP, although this may change in future. ADP has a very different assessment process, designed to be more humane than that of PIP. However, cuts to the government's PIP bill will affect the amount of money that the Scottish Government receives from Westminster for ADP, with this potentially taking place at a time when the Scottish Fiscal Commission has forecast that overall spending on social security north of the border is to rise from £4.2 billion in 2022 to 2023 to £8 billion in 2028 to 2029. The Scottish Government will find it difficult to maintain the current eligibility criteria for ADP, as the effects of the more restrictive criteria announced for England and Wales begin to bite, and has a knock-on effect on the Scottish Bloc grant. SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn MP warned that the cuts will harm the most vulnerable, push disabled people into poverty, and mark the start of a new era of austerity cuts under the Labour Party. A column written by the wee ginger Doug.
The National News on Wednesday the 19th of March. Shipyard could have built the 7 new ferries, says ex-owner Jim McCall. An article written by Laura Pollock. The Ferguson Marine Shipyard would have been perfectly capable of building 7 new ferries, rather than the Polish rival it has lost out to, its former owner has said. Ferry procurement arm Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, or CMAL, said on Monday that preferred bidder status for the new vessels, intended to serve Scotland's smaller islands, would go to a Polish yard rather than the one in Port Glasgow. Ferguson Marine, which was rescued by the Scottish Government from administration in 2019, has faced criticism in recent years for the much-delayed and over-budget building of 2 ferries for the Isle of Arran. Jim McCall, who previously owned Ferguson Marine, blamed CMAL for problems building the 2 Arran ferries and accused the Scottish Government of doing a hatchet job on the yard to divert attention away from problems with CMAL. Speaking to BBC Radio Scotland's Good Morning Scotland programme, he said it was an absolute crying shame that Ferguson Marine had missed out on the contract. He said, "That yard is perfectly capable of building those ferries. You know, the first one that we built when we took over was the Katrina, which is about the same size, and it was delivered on budget and 6 weeks early. The workforce is capable of it, and the yard is perfectly suitable for building these and competing against the Poles." Remontowa Shipbuilding in Gdansk scored the highest in the tender process for the 7 new ferries. Contracts are hoped to be finalised following a 10-day standstill period. Mr McCall rescued the Port Glasgow shipyard from administration when he bought it in 2014, and the contract to build the 2 ferries for Calmac was announced by the Scottish Government the following year. The yard has come under intense scrutiny due to the delayed and over-budget Arran Ferries, Glen Sannox and the Glen Rosa, the overall cost of which is approaching 4 times the initial figure of £97 million. On Friday, the Glen Sannox was taken out of service due to a crack in its hull, just 2 months after entering service. It has since returned to service. The yard has not ruled out further delays to its sister ship, the Glen Rosa, which is currently due to be handed over in September. Mr McCall blamed CMAL for the problems, saying the specification was a real mess from CMAL. That's where the problem is, and it's been absolutely impossible for manager after manager to get to grips with that, as they're constantly changing what they need to do. So this isn't a problem that the yard has. The government has done a great job of destroying that yard's reputation by diverting attention from where the real problem is. Mr McCall said he thinks that the yard can survive if it is turned over into private hands. He said, the yard has got to survive, but it needs to be by the government getting out of there, turning it over into private hands and agreeing to fund it for a few years so that the good, efficient management can work with that yard. Because it's a good facility and there's a very experienced workforce, and it's terrible what the government has done with its propaganda campaign against the yard, diverting attention away from a quango that has made an absolute mess of this. An article written by Laura Pollock. The National, World News, on Wednesday the 19th of March. Plea for calm amid club fire protests in North Macedonia. An article issued by the National News Desk. Authorities in North Macedonia appealed for calm as student groups called for fresh protests over the nightclub fire that killed 59 people and injured more than 150 over the weekend. The disaster, which occurred early on Sunday morning at Club Pulse in the eastern town of Kočani after pyrotechnics were used during a concert, has sparked outrage over alleged corruption and safety violations. Demonstrations took place yesterday in both Kočani and the capital, Skopje, with some turning violent as protesters in Kočani overturned a van and hurled rocks at a building. We must call once again for reason, Interior Minister Panče Toškovski said in an interview with private Saitel television. We must allow the prosecuting authorities to do their job so that in the end we can finally normalise the state. Investigations revealed that the club was operating at least double its 250-person capacity without proper licensing. Officials said that there were numerous safety violations, including no emergency exits, insufficient fire equipment, the use of flammable cladding and no sprinkler system. Many victims were trampled as panicked concert-goers rushed towards a single exit. Neighbouring Serbia and Bulgaria, which immediately offered assistance, observed a day of national mourning yesterday. Medical specialists from the Czech Republic, Serbia and Israel had arrived to support treatment efforts for the injured, a health ministry official said. The European Union is helping to transport burn victims to nearby countries. Around 50 patients are being treated in mostly neighbouring and nearby countries. The majority have serious burns. Authorities are investigating allegations that club owners bribed officials to bypass safety regulations. The government has ordered nationwide inspections of all nightclubs and other entertainment venues. An article issued by the National News Desk.
This is from the National on Thursday, 20th March 2025, from the Culture section. Scottish City named one of the world's top LGBT+ destinations, by Andrew Smart. A Scottish city has been named one of the world's top LGBT+ destinations by the respected travel publisher Lonely Planet. Edinburgh was named alongside spots around the globe, including Cape Town in South Africa and Bangkok in Thailand. The Queer Holiday Guide has been compiled by Alicia Waliensky, who is determined to make the world more accessible for everyone. From drag bars to queer swimming clubs, these delightfully diverse destinations are said to offer a range of inclusive activities. Discussing Scotland's capital, Lonely Planet highlighted a number of excellent locations visitors need to check out, including the radical bookshop Lighthouse, run by Mary Oliver. The guide said that the store is full of gay books from the 80s and 90s and dubbed it a lovely intergenerational space. The original founders, who are in their 70s now, are usually there, but the shop also includes staff from across age ranges. Type Wronger Books was highlighted as another of Edinburgh's must-visit queer spaces. T. Hodges, who founded the hub, is a non-binary printer who has their own Riso printer. They run printing workshops and teach people to make zines, and they run an annual Edinburgh Zine Fair, which is always worth looking out for. For something more outdoorsy, try the Edinburgh Queer Hiking Group, which has hundreds, if not thousands, of members across the city. They'll take people who don't live in Edinburgh out on guided excursions and walks. The publisher adds there's also Queer Swim Edinburgh, where they'll take you on a guided tour down towards the New Haven area to places where you can swim. That's especially nice if you're nervous to try wild swimming on your own for the first time, or maybe it's your first time in a swimsuit since transitioning, or whatever the case may be. Lonely Planet's The LGBT Plus Travel Guide is available from the publisher's website and is priced at £22.99. That article was by Andrew Smart. This is from The National on Thursday, 20th March 2025, from the Culture section. Top Scottish band's stolen centuries-old bagpipes found in alley, by Xander Elliards. A top Scottish trad band who had a set of century-old bagpipes stolen while on tour in Australia have hailed the incredible news that the instrument has been found in an alley. Skerryvore, who have grown into one of Scotland's most popular trad bands after being founded in 2005 in Tiree, were on tour in Melbourne when a car they were using was broken into. The group shared an image of a shattered car window on Instagram, saying that a 1920s ebony lorry bagpipes set was just one of several items stolen. An electric guitar, laptop and camera were also taken. Skerryvore said it had been an absolutely revolting end to what had been an incredible tour of Australia. However, in a new post on Thursday morning, the band announced that the set of bagpipes has been found, although other items remain missing. This is just incredible. The bagpipes have been found, Skerryvore wrote in a new Instagram post. Spotted in an alley by a 3AW Melbourne listener and Good Samaritan, Tony, who contacted the show and us, and now in the safe hands of Willie Hutton from Claymore. They went on, lead singer Alec Dalglish's guitar is sadly still very much at large, but we are ever more confident of it being found, thanks to the truly incredible support from the people of Melbourne and beyond, local radio stations, newspapers, businesses and bands all helping out, and people literally walking the streets and visiting pawn shops out of the kindness of their hearts. This really does help to restore faith in humanity, they wrote, adding a heart and a thankful emoji. Skerryvore shared an image of bagpiper Scott Wood, whose name was on the kit found in the alley, as well as one of the still missing guitar. The news has been welcomed by other social media users, with one writing, "The average crook would not know what to do with pipes and couldn't unload them easily." Good luck you get more back. Fantastic, another added. That article was by Xander Elliards.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Tune Review and to tell your friends about our service.